Legion Award, the Robinson Center Ballroom. It's a lunch. And I know Jeff, you bought a table today. I appreciate that, Jeff Hildebrand. It's not about me. It's supporting this organization. I had a chance to go over there and tour it. And right here in our backyard, we got people coming all around the world here to learn and try to function in society that are blind and visually impaired. So if you want to be a part of that, love to have you. That's between Larry Zonka and Earl Campbell. So you got Zonka, Basil, and Campbell. That shows you where I fit in there. But great to have Melanie, Ron, and Sharon as well. All right, it's time for our All Arkansas Preps Player of the Week. If I can find my sheets here. Tyler, come on up, big man. Well, I tell you what, I'm just going down the tubes. I'm going right down the tubes. Here, I'm going to get there. All right, here we go. Tyler Maxwell is a senior at Maumelle. 6'1". It's interesting about Tyler. He was an outside linebacker for 2 years, right, when you were at Mayflower. And then he comes over and you go from outside linebacker to quarterback this year. 2 weeks ago, listen to this. He's 12 of 20 for 205 yards, which sounds, that's not bad, for 5 touchdowns. So I don't know if the 12 of the 20 were pass touchdowns or a combination of run and pass, coach. But anyway, the tough thing for Tyler, I always ask, this is from 2 weeks ago, I said, well, what did you do last week? Because we like to mention this past week. And he said, well, and looked at the coaches, and they go, well, he got concussed. And I said, oh, my gosh, this is the first time ever we've done concussion protocol at the Touchdown Club. So Tyler didn't get a chance to play, but, Coach, can he play this upcoming week? It's not going to happen. Too tall? Cliff, back in your day, wasn't any talk of that, was there? He said, Cliff said ammonia tablets. That's what it is. So let's get, I love that. Let me tell you, when this country was great, we were using ammonia tablets on our players on the field. Let's give a round of applause to Tyler Maxwell, our Player of the Week. Good-looking young man there. His father's here, Shane Maxwell. Shane, thank you for being here. And his coaches, Jared Barnhill and Kirk Horton. You guys are 3-1. Who you got this week? Parkview. All right. Oh, War Memorial Stadium. How fitting. That's awesome. Glad to know that. All right. I'm sure it'll be an interesting weekend in review. Let's give it up for Rex Nelson, everybody.
Thank you. It's the big clock that's throwing David off. We're worried about the time. Pressure's on. Big clock's on. Or maybe you were just feeling the imbalance, David, kind of made you a little dizzy. I mean, think of it. On one side of the stage, we have 2 of the greatest players ever to play in the history of the National Football League. And on the other side, we got Gary and Rasco. So, little imbalance up here on this stage. All right, let's get to it. We're going to make it fast again. Auburn 34, Arkansas 3. Like David said, some rays of light out there, but still special team problems. A 96-yard kickoff return, long punt returns. Arkansas did outgain Auburn 290 to 225, but Auburn didn't have to go far for its scores generally because of those kicking game breakdowns. Auburn wins its 3rd in a row in this series. They've won the last 3. This one hurts, against Arkansas by a combined 116 points the last 3 times they played. 8th consecutive SEC opener for Arkansas to lose. Hogs are 2-7 in their 2nd SEC games over the last 9 years going into this one against Texas A&M. The last time to win a conference opener was over Georgia in 2010. Arkansas 11-16-1 all-time against Auburn. Arkansas has been outscored 41-14 in the 4th quarter. Got to get better in the 4th quarter this season, and been outscored in the 4th quarter 298-192 the past 3 seasons. Gus Malzahn 5-1 as Auburn head coach against Arkansas. All right, let's move on. ASU, big win and a driving rain up in Jonesboro. Arkansas State 27, UNLV 20. The first time, get this, to beat non-conference FBS opponents back-to-back since ASU moved to the FBS 26 years ago. Red Wolves are 3-1 for the first time in a decade. Their quarterback, Justice Hansen, 19 of 27 for 199 yards passing. Now conference plays start, and they are the favorite to win the Sun Belt Conference. UAPB falls to 1-3, 0-1 after a 62-13 loss to Prairie View A&M, which goes to 2-3, 1-0 in the SWAC. Now, I want you to look for silver linings when it comes to football. Great silver lining here, David. UAPB gave up 28 less points than it did in the previous game. How's that? Gave up 90 the week before. So that's progress. That's progress. The UAPB has given up 152 points in the past 2 games. Prairie View had 588 yards of offense in the first half. 588 in the first half. It was the 10th loss in 11 games for UAPB, 6th consecutive time for Prairie View to beat UAPB. But, yeah, let's move on, Ron. And we're going to move on to news that makes Cliff Harris and I very happy. Ouachita moves to 4-0 with a 42-0 victory over 1-3 East Central Oklahoma at Cliff Harris Stadium in Arkadelphia with Cliff Harris in the house. So that's great. You know, that's neat, David, to be able to say that. I was thinking as we were doing the broadcast Saturday night and had Cliff on, most stadiums are named after dead people when you come to think of it. So it's, you know, it's very unusual to have the stadium namesake with you when you're on the air. Brockton Brown had 3 of those touchdowns. He's out of Sheridan. Ouachita led 28-0 at the half and never looked back. Ouachita limited East Central to just 82 yards rushing and 8 first downs. Southern Arkansas also off to a great start, 4-0. 27-14 win over 1-3 Northwestern Oklahoma. Mule Riders outgained Northwestern 342-254, but didn't really put that one away in Magnolia until the fourth quarter. Harding goes to 3-1 following a 56-7 victory over 2-2 Oklahoma Baptist. Now, I didn't want y'all to get confused when Gary referenced OBU. He went to the lesser OBU. That's his alma mater. Harding had 3 players rush for 100 yards or more. The Bisons had 508 yards of offense, and get this, 457 of it came on the ground. Harding led that one 35-7 at halftime. Arkansas Tech wins its second straight to go to 2-2, 24-10 over 1-3 Southern Nazarene. Tech trailed that one 10-0 at the half, but the Wonder Boys held to 141 yards of offense in the first half, finished with 377. Brian Allen rushes for 175 yards on 33 carries. Henderson falls to 1-3, a 35-31 loss to 2-2 Southwestern Oklahoma. Reddy's led 24-14 at the half, but Southwestern scored with just 28 seconds left in the game to win it. Henderson had just 84 yards on the ground. Now, new Division II poll is out. Ouachita is up to number 7 in the country in NCAA Division II. SAU is 19th, and Harding is 20th. So 3 of the top 20 teams in Division II are from the state of Arkansas. That's really saying something for Division II football. UAM also fell to 1-3, a 21-7 loss to 2-2 Southeastern Oklahoma. UAM held scoreless until the fourth quarter, had just 195 yards of offense. Weevils were just 3 of 17 on third down. Ed, don't you love these names in Arkansas? Boll Weevils and Mule Riders and Wonder Boys. I mean, we got very unique mascots here. In NCAA Division III, Hendricks 1-3, following a 12-9 loss to Austin College down in Sherman, Texas. Now, on to the SEC. Number 1, Alabama. Seems to get better every week. 45-23 over this week's Hog opponent, the Aggies. Tua passes for 387 yards, 4 touchdowns. Tide goes to 4-0 overall, 2-0 in the SEC. A&M will come into Saturday's game at 2-2 overall, 0-1 in the SEC. And as David referenced when talking about Michael, how about Kentucky shocking Mississippi State? And it wasn't even close, 28-7. Guy named Benny Snell Jr. rushes for 4 touchdowns. Mississippi State had come in averaging 311 yards per game on the ground and were held to just 56 yards rushing by Kentucky. Kentucky is 4-0 2-0 in the SEC. I don't know if I've ever said that at a touchdown club meeting. The Bulldogs fall to 3-1. They are 0-1 in the SEC. Wow, Kentucky's quite a surprise so far. Georgia still playing well. They're 4-0 overall, 2-0 in the SEC. Missouri falls to 3-1 and 0-1. The Bulldogs win 43-29 up in Columbia as Jake Fromm throws 3 TD passes. LSU 4-0 following a 38-21 win over a pretty good Louisiana Tech team that had come in at 2-0. Bulldogs were as close as 24-21 in the fourth quarter of that game. Florida is 3-1 overall, 1-1 SEC. Tennessee falls to 2-2, 0-1. Gators win convincingly in Knoxville, 47-21. Tennessee had 6 turnovers. They gave up a safety and fumbled a ball out of the end zone for a touchback, so it wasn't even close. South Carolina 2-1 overall, 1-1 in the SEC. Vanderbilt falls to 2-2, 0-1 as the Gamecocks win 37-14 over in Nashville. Jake Bentley throws for 261 yards and a touchdown. And Ole Miss is 3-1 following a 38-17 non-conference victory in a game over at Oxford against Kent State that had several long lightning delays. All right, this week in the state, none of our Division I teams are at home, but we have a couple of Division II teams at home. We have our Division III team at home. We have our NAIA team at home. So it's Arkansas Tech at Ouachita. That's a noon kickoff at Cliff Harris Stadium. Harding at UAM at the Cotton Bowl. That's spelled B-O-L-L down there, not like the one in Dallas. Sewanee at Hendricks in the Brain Bowl. And Panhandle State is at Line in Batesville. So you have Arkadelphia, Monticello, Conway, and Batesville. Still a reason to get out and see a college football game on Saturday. Thanks, everybody.
We'll bring up Jim to introduce Too Tall. I didn't mention them, but Melanie Jones, Ron Copeland, and Sharon Giovinazzo. Would you please stand for the World Services for the Blind? I didn't realize you guys were here. Please let's welcome them again. Also, too, every time Cliff Harris comes, he always brings his buddy. He's got an entourage. And today, Doug Freeze, Larry Wooldridge, and David Williams. Would you please stand? Let's welcome Cliff's buddies. These are buddies of Friends of Cliff, FOC. Right? There's two. And, you know, there's always consequences when things don't go well. And so the consequences continue for the Razorbacks. I've got about 50 texts. This week we play A&M in Arlington. Kickoff is 11 o'clock. Just announced by ESPN. The Alabama game, 11 o'clock in Fayetteville. I tell you what, do you even tailgate? That's like just have breakfast and go to the game, right? And then what scares me is that there's a good chance maybe that the following week Ole Miss would be 11. I mean, just go to bed at a decent hour. That's all. Tailgate after the game. That's right. All right. I promised Too Tall. I said your introduction. You're probably gonna hear something about yourself you hadn't heard in 30 years. Nobody does it better. Give it up for Jim Rasco, everybody.
Okay, as all of you know, Basil only allows me 4 minutes, so I'm going to have to talk fast. And to help me cover more of our speakers' NFL career, today we have our speaker's former teammate. He's been mentioned already, but you know him as the 5-time All-Pro, 6 Pro Bowls, 5 Super Bowls, and Sports Illustrated select him as the greatest free safety in the history of the NFL. Out of Ouachita, an inductee into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame, Cowboy number 43, Cliff Harris. Stand up, Cliff. Stand up. Okay, you'll hear more from Cliff in a few minutes. Our speaker was born and raised in Jackson, Tennessee, which is 70 miles east of Memphis. He attended Jackson Mary High, and at 6'9", 225 pounds, Edward Jones was the leading scorer on his basketball team, leading the Hornets to 26 consecutive victories before losing in the semifinals of the state tournament. And we got a picture I found of him. He's on the right as you look at it. Looks like the guy beside him is also 6'9". Okay, the Hornets had 26 consecutive victories before losing in the semifinals of the state tournament. That picture was from the quarterfinals, which they won. He had 22 points and 21 rebounds. During the district tournament, he took time out to enter the West Tennessee Golden Gloves boxing tourney. He knocked out his first opponent with one punch. But he told the officials of the tournament he had better withdraw so he could rejoin the basketball team. The following summer, he played in the Tennessee High School All-Star game and led his team to a 101-63 victory. The All-Star coach said, "I don't think I've ever seen a stronger high school player. He looked like a defensive tackle, and he'll make a driving guard think twice." Okay, I could spend 30 minutes repeating some of the stories about his brother-in-law getting him to play 1 year of high school football. I think one of the stories was the brother-in-law was a coach of the football team, and he promised Ed he could use his car if he would come out for football. Is that correct, Ed? Sort of? Sort of. Okay, I've got some better stories about his recruitment to Tennessee State, but I can't, and some while he was there, but I can't use all those, don't have time. I hope Ed covers some of these stories in his talk. All right, I would be remiss if I didn't relay the version of how he got his famous nickname. The best version I uncovered was from the Dallas Morning News. Ed was quoted as saying that when he was a freshman at Tennessee State, a teammate, Fred Herring, who was then playing with the Cincinnati Bengals, stuck the too tall tag on him after watching Ed pull on his football pants for the first time. I'll defer to Ed to confirm if that's the correct version, or he can tell us what really happened. Okay, as to his college football career, since I don't have enough time, I'll just say he was first team All-America, played in all 3 college All-Star games following his senior season. And that year, for the first time in the history of the Dallas Cowboys, they had the first choice in the first round because they had a trade with Houston the previous year. And by December of 1973, in all the newspaper write-ups I could find, there was no doubt that Ed Jones would be the first choice in the NFL draft. And that's exactly what happened on January 29, 1974. First choice, first round. As a rookie in 1974, Ed saw action all 14 games and then moved in the starting lineup as the left defensive end of the Cowboys for the rest of his career. In his second season as a pro, the Cowboys lost a heartbreaker to the Steelers by 4 points in Super Bowl X. 2 years later, he picked up his Super Bowl ring as the Cowboys beat the Broncos 27-10 in Super Bowl XII. Following year, Ed was named second-team All-Conference. The Cowboys were in the Super Bowl for the 3rd time in his first 4 seasons as a starter. On January 21, 1979, it was another 4-point loss to the Steelers in Super Bowl XIII. Following the Super Bowl, believe it or not, Ed decided to retire from the Cowboys and go into professional boxing as a heavyweight. During 1979, he won all 6 of his professional fights, 5 by knockouts. But in 1980, he returned to the Cowboys, starting defensive left end for the last 10 years of his career. 1981, the NEA selecting first-team All-Pro, selected to play in the Pro Bowl for the first time. 1982, first-team All-Pro by the AP and another Pro Bowl. 1983, first-team All-Conference, second-team All-Pro, and a 3rd consecutive Pro Bowl. 1985, at the age of 34, second-team All-Conference. And in 1986, 1987, and 1988, he was selected NFC Defensive Player of the Week at least once each season. In 1989, at the age of 38, he played his final season as a Cowboy under new coach Jimmy Johnson. Okay, David, I've probably used up most of my 4 minutes, so you can dock me 1 minute off next week's intro, but I got to close with a few quotes from some football historians. First quote, Too Tall Jones had 106 sacks and 102 passes deflected, the only 100-100 club member in NFL history. In addition, he was credited with 11 block kicks, recovered 19 fumbles, and intercepted 3 passes in his career. Another quote, I doubt there has ever been and maybe won't ever be a big, tall man with his level of football athletic ability, immovable at the point of attack even in his final years, and there's never been a stronger power rusher. One more. A famous offensive lineman of the Rams said, Too Tall was saddled with a bad defensive scheme for him. The Dallas flex defense frequently kept him off the line. If he had played with the Rams, where they let their guys get up the field and then react to the run, he may have been the best ever. Most importantly, Pro Football Reference published its all-decade team of the 1980s. The 2 defensive ends chosen as the best of the decade were Dan Hampton of the Chicago Bears and from the Dallas Cowboys, number 72, Ed Too Tall Jones.
Check, check, check. All right. Ed, welcome to Little Rock.
Thank you.
The one good thing about sitting up here next to Ed, I know I'm going to look small, so that's a good thing. Say something in there again.
1, 2, 1.
Yeah, you good. You good? We good back there? I thought, because I told him we had Mean Joe Green a few weeks ago. And I said, Mean Joe set a high bar. And you know what Mean Joe brought, Too Tall? He brought the Coke commercial. So I thought, wait a minute. It's only fair that we also bring something for Too Tall. Lights, please, Brad. Matthew, turn your attention to the screen.
Could switching to Geico really save you 15% or more on car insurance? Is Ed Too Tall Jones too tall?
I'm just gonna guesstimate.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you.
How about that? How about that? Not bad. So how long did you shoot that commercial?
Took a week.
Took away. We learned we found out with Meat Joe that he burped every time he did that Coke commercial. It took him 3 days to film that too. Did that get a good response for you, the Geico commercial?
It did. In fact, I have to tell a funny story. A few weeks ago, actually, I was in Tampa, Florida, staying at the Hard Rock Cafe Casino, and I got out of this big limo with some friends of mine. We were out celebrating one of my best friend's birthdays. So I step out of the limo, and these 3 ladies standing there yell, "That's that Geico man." I played 15 years in the NFL, never missed a game, but I'm known as the Geico man.
Yeah, that's something. We got a lot of ground to cover today, and I'm going to bring up Cliff Harris here in just a few minutes too, but I did because you referenced it there. This is an amazing stat. You played 15 years in the league, very tough physical game. Never missed a game. Here's what's more amazing. Missed 1 practice in his entire career. 1. Yeah, let's have a round of applause for that. And the one, of course, was for the funeral of your mom,
Funeral
right?
of my mom, that's correct.
Yeah, that was the only one. So you look like you could still play. I was told a few minutes ago that you're doing 100-mile bike rides. Is that right?
One of the things that I prayed for when I joined the Dallas Cowboys in 1974, because I was aware at that time that the average player played 4 years, mainly because of knee injuries. And being the tallest at the time in the history of the game, I said to myself, there's no way I will last 4 years. But the thing that I prayed for was to get out with my legs, because I'm a big cyclist, so is my oldest brother. It's something I've done all my life, and it's my favorite pastime. And I in 100-mile races, 60-mile races. If there's a cycling race out there, call me.
Now, we have to go back. Let's go back a little bit. And I know this is sort of very superficial, but it's just something I got to ask. How big how much did you weigh, and what were your size as a baby?
I was very small. I was very small, but I did everything fast. I was walking at 6 months, and totally independent. My sister would mention that when they would take me with them to the malls or to the grocery store where you put a lot of kids on the basket, I would not let them put me in that basket. I would not let them carry me ever. So, and I was growing spurts. In fact, I had growing pains, but we didn't know it was growing pains. I grew up on a farm, and I did a lot of crazy stuff out on that farm, jumping off bonds and all that stuff. And anything that I saw a cowboy do in a Western movie, I was trying to do it. And my mom used to complain about me doing it all the time, so it was actually growing pains, and we thought it was just something I was doing stupid out on that farm. So,
well, I do know this, is that when you see a guy like this, you presume your mom and dad must have been giants. How tall were your mom and dad?
No, my mom was 5'5". My dad was 5'8". My dad was a trotter horse racer. If those of you know about with the little buggy, my dad was a blues singer and a trotter horse racer, but the gene was there. I was told by so-called experts that if there's anybody in your family 6'2", you could be 7 feet tall. Where my mom had a brother 6'8", my dad had a brother 6'7". So the gene was there on both sides.
You mentioned growing up on a farm. One of the things, and you were a great athlete. Jim referenced it. Baseball, basketball, you love those. And the other thing that I didn't realize that boxing was very big. That you grew up. Your dad he would make a circle or a square in the field, right, with some.
My dad was a big NASCAR fan and boxing fan, and oftentimes when after school, we'd do our homework and then we'd go out and play, and you get tired of each other, and you and your little buddies start fighting. So what my dad and his buddies would do is they take some fertilizer and draw a square ring, light their cigars, their pipes, and say, okay, get in and fight. Well, pretty soon we learn how to get along with each other. But I think the fact that he was a big fight fan and all the young men want to be like their dads growing up. I remember when fights weren't televised. When my dad would be sitting listening to him on the radio, I'd be in his lap just watching the expression on his face because I knew if his fighter won, he'd go out and play catch with me. So then when I was old enough to where my mom allowed me to ride into the city and train at a boxing gym there, and the first day that the trainer taught me how to wrap my hands and hit a heavy bag, speed bag, I was hooked. I was hooked in. So I knew one day I would fight.
You said the first, I think Jim referenced it, you knocked out a guy in 16 seconds. At the same time you were playing basketball, and it was on the front page of the newspaper that you knocked him out. It was Golden Gloves in 16 seconds. And what did the basketball coach tell you?
That's right. I decided to fight in the Golden Gloves, and it's still a record in Tennessee. I knocked this guy in 16 seconds and made the front page. Now, if you make the front page in my hometown, that's big news. Unfortunately, my basketball coach saw it and gave me an ultimatum. Either give up boxing or I had to give up basketball, whatever the no-brainer. But again, anytime you are denied something that you really want to do, one day, if that opportunity ever arrives again, you're going to do it. And I knew after being denied the opportunity to fight Golden Gloves, and at the time I was thinking a professional boxing career because I wasn't playing football at the time because my high school didn't have a football team. I was a very good baseball player but didn't like it. I remember when I was a senior, they didn't have the draft then, but teams would invite you to camp. The Cincinnati Reds invited me to their training camp. My mom said, nope, you're going to college. And this is the same year they came out with that new fastback Mustang. I said, but Mom, if I, go to the Reds camp and make the team, I'd be able to afford my own fastback Mustang. She said, son, you do the right thing and go to college. Not only will you be able to afford it for yourself, but for your friends too. So that was my baseball career.
Good advice by your mom there, though, too. So you go to Tennessee State, historically black college, but you go to play basketball, right?
Yeah. My original plan was to go to Arizona State. Arizona State had a very good baseball program and a good basketball program. But my father passed my senior year. And my brother-in-law, who had married my oldest sister, became my mentor. He said, you need to go to Tennessee State, which was only a 2-hour drive, where you can check on your mom. Well, my mom didn't even know how to drive. She did everything with my dad. And and I had 2 younger sisters at home. My older brother and the sisters were away in college. So I said, okay, I'm going to Tennessee State. He said, and you're a football player. I said, football? I don't know anything about football. We didn't have no professional teams in Tennessee at the time. No professional baseball, basketball, or football teams. So my brother gave me a crash course along with my brother-in-law in football. So I went to Tennessee State, and first day, like the gentleman mentioned, walked in the equipment room, first day of practice, they gave me the longest pair of pants they had, which hit me above my knees. And the equipment manager said, wear these and stay out of contact drills, we'll have your pair made. And so I walked out, and a gentleman named Freddie Hearn, who played for the Cincinnati Bengals, did a double take and said, you know you're too tall for football, and that's how I got the nickname. But Tennessee State was, and the Division II Tennessee State was the best thing that could have ever happened to me in reference to football, because I'm a true believer that you go further in something that you really like. And like I said, I was a very good baseball player, very good basketball player. But the minute the first year I tried out for football, I absolutely loved it. And had I gone to a Division I school, there's no way they would have devoted the attention that I needed. I was a raw talent. Division I school, they had the best athletes in the country. So I would have been another number. But Tennessee State took me under their wings, made me attend practice, the first player on the field at practice, and the last one to leave every day. And one of the things that my coach set me down and told me when he realized that they weren't going to run me off, because Tennessee State had a very good program at the time, and they were known for roughhousing guys, and they didn't want you around if you weren't serious about playing. So once the coach realized they weren't going to run me off, he sat down with me one-on-one and said, Ed, you realize I was 6'7" at the time. He said, you would be one of the tallest in the history of the game if you played today. He said, the average player played 4 years, mainly because of knee injuries. Most injuries occur in the fourth quarter when fatigue set in. In order for you to make it to that next level, you would have to be one of the best conditioned athletes on the field. And if you're willing to continue to have the good work ethics and work at it, I will make you the best conditioned athlete on the field. So not only did I go through his rigorous program, I also worked out with the Tiger Bells, the track team, which had several women go on to win gold medals in the Olympics. And to make sure I worked out, I even dated a lady on that team to make sure I showed up to be the best conditioned athlete I could be. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to not only get out of college without missing a game, but also I continue to try and be the best conditioned player on the field, even in the pros with the Dallas Cowboys.
So you try this football, you become great at it, you're an All-American at Tennessee State, and the next thing you know, they're talking about you being the first player picked in the NFL draft overall. The Dallas Cowboys, Jim said, had never had the overall top pick. So that had to be surreal. Do you remember that with Gil Brandt and Tom Landry? Remember now, Cliff has already played in 2 Super Bowls, won one and lost one in the early 70s. And here's 1974, and they're talking about you being the first player picked. What do you recall of that?
The Cowboys had traded with Houston, Toby Smith, Bubba Smith brother, and Billy Parks, an up-and-coming receiver, for the right for that first pick. Connell Green worked for the Dallas Cowboys during the off-season. So the Cowboys would send him to Tennessee State. He would talk to not only Tennessee State, my hometown. I found that out later, too, that he would talk to my coaches, the teachers, students trying to find out all they could about me. And when after my senior year and the Dallas Cowboys called me and said, we're going to make you the first player picked, who would you like to fly to Dallas with you? And I said, I'd like for my brother-in-law and my head coach. So we fly to Dallas, and my brother-in-law and my coach sat me down and said, now, you know Dallas not going to draft you #1 overall. I said, why did you say that? He said, because they don't draft linemen #1 overall. That's guys who play those glamour positions, quarterbacks, running backs. So Gil Brandt had told my brother-in-law and my head coach, now, you guys go to any restaurant you want, do whatever you want to do, and just bring us the tab. So my brother-in-law was the first one that said, we're going to go to the biggest steakhouse in Dallas. We're going to drink the best wine because we know they're not drafting you #1 overall. He said, in fact, they probably have quarterbacks at other hotels all over Dallas. So we did. We went to the biggest steakhouse, Bob's Chopping Steakhouse. We had the biggest steak and the best wine they had. Next morning, about 6 a.m., there was a knock on my door. I opened the door, and this guy said, meet Coach Landry out front of the hotel in front of the marquee with your name on it at 8 o'clock in the morning. Don't be late. And left. I said, excuse me, you telling me my name's on this marquee outside of this hotel? He said, yes. So when he left, I waited about 5 minutes. I walked outside. And here's this big sign saying, welcome to the Dallas Cowboys, Ed Too Tall Jones. And I about fainted in disbelief. And I say that because growing up in Tennessee, we didn't have no professional teams. We either got Dallas or St. Louis, which is Arizona now. Well, we got Dallas the majority of the time because they were winning. So everybody was Cowboy fans. So I'm sitting going, are you telling me I'm going to get to play for the man that wear the hat that I admire and respect a lot, and all these legends that I've watched every Sunday? So I walked down and I walked to my brother-in-law's room first, knocked on the door. I said, Big Red, you're not going to believe this. The guy just knocked on my door, and I'm meeting Tom Landry out front at 8 o'clock to take a photo. Now, I can't tell you what my brother-in-law said. I can't repeat that. I said, follow me. He looked at it in disbelief and said, let's go tell Coach. Coach's up having coffee, smoking a cigar. When my brother-in-law told him, he almost swallowed his cigar. But to make a long story short, I met Coach Landry, took the photo, and he said, meet us up at the headquarters, which was next door, at 10 o'clock. I walked up there and still didn't believe it until Dallas called my name, and the first thing they said was, call your mom. And when I called my mom and said, Mom, you're not going to believe this, Dallas just made me the #1 pick, first thing she said was, put your brother-in-law on the phone. But it was a dream come true for me, perhaps the best thing that could have ever happened to me because, again, I was still learning the game, even though I had great coaches there at Tennessee State. But to go to a team, like I said, when I was a kid, my childhood dream team, play for a coach like Tom Landry, his assistant, and all the legends, one here with me this afternoon, was, I still pinch myself sometime to just make sure it's all real.
In that, at that point, you were the highest draft choices of any historically black college at the time, so that was another significant thing. And, of course, if everybody remembers the name of the Dallas defenses, right? What were they called? Doomsday. You had a chance to be with Doomsday 1 and Doomsday 2. We'll get Cliff up here in just a minute, but talk about that defensive line in Doomsday 1 that you played with.
Well, the thing that I admired most about Bob Lilly, Jethro Pugh, Larry Cole, Toomey, was not my rookie year, my second year, the year we drafted Randy White. Harvey Morton joined the team the year before I did. But the way Bob Lilly and those guys would make us watch film with them, teaching us how to pick out an opponent's strength and weaknesses, doing all these things, knowing we were there to take their job. Now, that goes to show you the character of those guys, knowing we were there to take their jobs. And that's why when they moved on, the thing that I never forgot that. And when we drafted Jim Jeffcoat, I took Jim Jeffcoat under my wings. When we drafted Tony Tolbert, I took Tony Tolbert under my wings. And to this day, when I run into those guys, one of the first things they say to me is, hey, man, thank you. Thank you for teaching me and working with me at a very young age when I was just a very young kid with raw talent. And it's only because of Doomsday 1. Those guys, of what they taught myself, Randy White and Harvey Morton. Those are the kind of guys and kind of players with the kind of character that Coach Landry drafted.
Let's welcome Cliff Harris, everybody. Cliff, come on up here. Grab that mic. It should be on, Cliff. So, Cliff, real quick, you had already played 2 Super Bowls. You came out of Arkansas. You were a free agent in 1970. You had played 2 Super Bowls, won one of them. What do you remember about Too Tall when you heard he was going to get signed as the first player picked in the draft?
He was big. I was a free agent, there were a lot of drafted players that came and went, looked good, a lot of reputation. And when I saw that Ed was going to be, I knew that he was a big, big guy. And I said, can he play? Well, he proved that. He was a great player. There were, you know, he made my job easier because you've got to think about a defensive back out there, and the timing it takes for a quarterback to drop back, set up, throw a pass, read the defense. When you've got a guy like Ed Jones coming in on you, because I think about what we had at that time. We had Ed Jones and Randy White and Harvey Martin, Pat Toomey, running up, attacking these quarterbacks. I have a charity golf tournament in Dallas that supports juvenile diabetes. Ed plays in it every year. Last year was 2017, so it was 40 years since we played in Super Bowl 12. Craig Morton, and I got him to come in and commemorate that year. He said, "Cliff, I'll do it if you won't show one picture," and it was a picture of Ed Jones, and he was way up in the air, and it was Craig was the quarterback down by a line.
Well, you know, it's amazing. You had played in 2 Super Bowls, Cliff, and you come into the league, Ed, and you go to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. I mean, it was almost like you're like, man, is it this easy? I mean, some guys never play, but you know, you lose 2, but you win 1. You beat the Broncos. And I wanted to get real quick to the point to where, and because you referenced it, when you have a dream, sometimes you want to pursue it. And so, did you think after those 3 Super Bowls, hey, man, this is so easy, I maybe want to try something that I've always wanted to try?
I felt the timing was right after, you know, this is what everybody worked for, this Super Bowl ring. And this is the thing that
I've got that one, but
pride
He's got that one.
I say that because, you know, beginning of training camp every year, you have one goal, one mission, to go to the Super Bowl and win it. And the thing that I wish every player who meant something to the game would have the opportunity to do is not only win one, just play in one. Play in one. I will never forget when we won that Super Bowl. I was on the bus sitting next to Harvey Martin, getting ready to ride back to the hotel and celebrate. I said, Harvey, did you realize tomorrow morning when we wake up, we are world champions? Harvey was at a loss for words. Now, anybody that know Harvey Martin know he's never at a loss for words. But that feeling you get is something that you can't explain. It's something that you have to live it. You have to experience it. I wish everybody could just experience being the best in whatever it is you do. Doesn't have to be football, in anything, and you know what I'm talking about. I shot a commercial recently with Dan Didoff, one of the toughest opponents I ever played against. Dan played 13 years, never played in a Super Bowl. He said, Ed, I would give 10 of those years up just to play in one. Deacon Jones, who I idolized, played 14 years. One of the best defensive ends that ever played a game. Never played in a Super Bowl. Again, that feeling you get is just so unbelievable till I wish everybody could experience it, and it only comes with hard work, guys who have a passion for the game, great coaching, and again, guys who lay it on the line every time that ball is snapped on Sundays.
So you lose to the Steelers. You beat the Broncos, you lose to the Steelers, and all of a sudden you decide, though, it's time for me to do something I always wanted to do.
I did, because I had my ring, and I was starting to think this was easy, you know, even though it's not. And that's why I tell guys even today, if you ever get the opportunity to go, you better take advantage of it. And once you go, you better win it, because it may never happen again. But going all the way back to when I knocked this guy out in 15 seconds, and I was denied an opportunity to fight for the championship, I knew I would do it one day, and I was 28 years old, and I said, this is the perfect time to do it. If I don't do it now, I'll never be able to try and achieve something that I really want to do. And that's when I called my mom, actually after my 4th year. I called my mom and said, Mom, I'm giving up football to pursue a career in boxing. and she said, explain your contract to me again. I said, I signed a 4-year deal with an option with Dallas. She said, don't burn any bridges. And she said, one thing for sure, you'll go further than something you really like. And what she meant was don't burn any bridges was let the Cowboys know in advance. I let them know a year in advance that I would be leaving. Didn't tell them what I was going to do, and I played out my option year. I played out my option year and called Tex Schramm, the general manager. Well, actually, he called me in. Said, Ed, we haven't heard from your agent. I said, you remember I told you a year in advance that I won't be returning. So the night before I was getting ready to hold a press conference in New York with the champion at the time, who was Larry Holmes, I didn't want my coaches or general managers, anybody, reading about it. So I called Tex Schramm, the general manager, and told him what I was doing. He said, have you talked to Landry? I said, no. He said, call Coach Landry. So I called Coach Landry. I said, Coach Landry, I just want to let you know that I'm having a press conference in New York tomorrow and to announce my retirement to go into boxing. He paused. He said, who is your trainer? I told him who my trainer was. He said, who's your manager? I told him who my manager was. He said, it sounds like some good people. I know a little bit about them. He said, I just want to let you know that I wish you well. Thank you for what you've done with Dallas the previous 5 years. He said, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call. I have to tell one funny story. About every 6 weeks, I would get a big box in the mail, UPS box, from the Dallas Cowboys, with sweatsuits, jerseys, with the biggest cowboy logos I've ever seen in my life, which means they had to have those custom made to remind me of the Dallas Cowboys. But they stayed in touch, and I only fought 1 year, 6 fights, and the reason why I retired is for reasons that I haven't told anyone yet, but everything I've heard is far from the truth. But the Cowboys welcomed me back with open arms. The management did, coaches and players. And those next 10 years, even though we didn't go to a Super Bowl, we got close, but it was some of the best years of my life because that elephant was off my back, having an opportunity to do something that I really want to do. And I encourage all of you in here, if you haven't, and have an opportunity to, whatever it is you really want to do, it's worth trying it once.
Show the picture. This is one of the, I don't know if this is the first. This is the first. Looks like you've got the reach advantage on him, Too Tall. But let it be said, 6-0, as you said, you were 6-0.
Yes.
Yeah, undefeated. Cliff, what did you think as a teammate when you heard that Too Tall was going into boxing?
Well, of course, I was very disappointed, discouraged. I knew what a great, other thing that Ed, we had a great team, a team that really were all linked together, cared about each other, and that's what you win with. And you lose one of your big name, great players like Ed Jones, because and I don't disagree with Merlin Olsen or whoever told you about playing for the Rams, Ed. We had such a unique system with a Landry flex where Ed would be off the line and
in a 4-point stance.
In a 4-point stance.
4-point stance, which is amazing.
And everything that didn't really maximize his ability. I think he could have been even a greater player that he was with the Rams or something like that. But it was really discouraging to hear, and you've got to do what you've got to do and make things work. But I think the last year that I played was the year you were out. We were one game away. We played the NFC Championship game, and I think if Ed had played, we lost that game to L.A. We would have beaten L.A. and I'd have been in 6, and you would have been in 4. So I'm still mad at you.
What do you remember about Cliff, Ed?
A lot. But first of all, let me say this with all honesty, and I've said this before when Cliff wasn't around. You mentioned the Hall of Fame. Cliff, I followed football, like I said, all my life. Even though I didn't play it, I still followed it, and I still follow it to this day. If I was coming out of college with the knowledge I have now, and I wanted a free safety on my team, it would be Cliff Harris. Cliff Harris deserved to be in everything that's out there offered in football. But I'm also going to say something he probably doesn't know. I broke my ribs 19 times during my career.
Oh, no.
The majority of those times happened early in my career when Cliff Harris was on the team. Because guys like Earl Campbell, Billy Sims, Zonka, those guys didn't want to go down. Now, I wasn't the weakest person in the world, but I wasn't the strongest either. So those guys would be twisting, trying to get loose. Cliff, that nickname Crash was very fitting for him, would come just blow up everything. Unfortunately, he would blow my ribs up. I remember the first time it happened, I mentioned it to the trainers, and Cliff heard about it and walked up to me and apologized. And I got on the trainers about it. And the reason why I did was because you're going to get injured in football. And the last thing I would want to do was take away his aggressiveness. So I never said a word to Cliff, but he broke my ribs so many times.
Now it's out.
You're not the
Sorry,
only. You're not the only. I don't think you're the only cowboy he broke ribs on.
I totally agree.
Last thing before we go, I was doing some research, and everybody remembers the catch. That was Joe Montana to Dwight Clark, and that really signaled the beginning of the 49er dynasty. But I went back and watched that film a bunch last night. You were the last guy to be in the face of Joe Montana. And it's an amazing play, Montana. I mean, the fact that he timed it, he saw you were jumping, and the fact he was able to get that over you. But according to the stuff I saw last night, the story is that once he made the completion, Montana didn't run over there to celebrate with Dwight Clark. And the 49ers were looking around. The story is, I want to know if this was true, that he found you, that he wanted to find you, and he went and said something to you that was not very nice. Is that true, or is that wives' tale?
Far from the truth. He was celebrating. Far from the truth. And I will always believe he was throwing the ball away, and he was throwing off the wrong foot, and it hung. And he just happened to have Dwight Clark in the end zone.
I'm with you, Ed.
Dwight Clark was a leaper. Everything had to be perfect. And you're right. That game, before the game, the thing we talked about all week was, this is the Super Bowl. We knew whoever won that game was going to win it all, and they went on to destroy the Cincinnati Bengals. But we knew that. But I will always believe he was throwing it away. I heard those rumors about what he said, and the game wasn't over. If you remember, we had the ball driving, and we had the best kicker in the league. Raphael was the best kicker in the league at the time, and Hicks made a diving catch. Drew had on a tearaway jersey, he would have been gone at the 50. Still with time left to get in field goal range. And the ball was fumbled at the snap between Danny White and the center that gave them the ball back. We still had an opportunity to beat them.
You think those old memories still don't stay in his head? They do mine too, Ed.
Well, listen, you were outstanding. Thank you for squeezing us in your schedule. He's a busy guy. He speaks all over the country. Let's give it up for Ed Too Tall Jones, everybody. See you next week. Blake Anderson.
Thank you.